Hello everybody, it's Sarah and welcome to day 10 of Bookmas, and today we're going to talk about this series right here, which is the Witcher series by Andrzej Sapkowski. And actually I had other jewelry on before I sat down to film, well, as I sat down to film, but then I remembered that I used to be a teenager obsessed with the occult and also with wolves. And I was like, wait a second, I'm sure we're gonna be able to find some jewelry that's a bit more fitting. And so that's how I ended up now wearing necklaces that I have not worn since I was 15 years old. And I'm not even sure if you can see it, that this is a wolf with a moon. But yeah, so I guess my own little Witcher amulet or whatever. But yeah. Let's get back to talking about this series. This is going to be a spoiler-free review of the Witcher series. I will talk to you about what this series is about. I will talk to you about my personal recommended reading order of the books between the short stories, the single story at the end, as well as the overarching plot line. And then lastly, I will of course talk to you about the stuff that I like, the stuff that I didn't like, and would I as a whole recommend you go and read this series. But yeah, let's start with what this series actually is about. The Witcher series is an 8-book adult high fantasy series by the Polish author Andrzej Sapkowski, so it has been translated from Polish into English. And it consists of 2 short story collections, which are The Last Wish as well as Sword of Destiny. Then you have a main storyline, overarching storyline that consists of 5 books. The first of those being Blood of Elves, then the second being Time of Contempt, the third one Baptism of Fire, the fourth one The Tower of the Swallow, and then the fifth and last one being The Lady of the Lake. And then at the very end you have one more standalone story that is Season of Storms. All in all, in the entirety of the series, our main character is Geralt of Rivia, who is a witcher. What that means is that he has been alchemically, magically mutated and trained to be better able to hunt and kill monsters. And that is what he does for a living. He gets paid and he kills monsters. That's basically his life. And so that's whom we follow in the first 2 short story collections, and then the main story follows Geralt as his life and destiny becomes entwined with Siri, who is the child of the Elder Blood, and we figure out what that's supposed to mean, and so on. So that's on what The Witcher is about, and now let's talk about how I would go about reading the books. I know there are people who say that you can go into the main story without having read the short story collections first. I wouldn't do that. I would at least read Sword of Destiny, because within one of the short story collections here, I think it was in Sword of Destiny, is where the relationship between Ciri and Geralt is kind of, introduced for the first time. Their dynamic is introduced. This book very much already sets up some of the story arcs from the main story. That happens less so in The Last Wish, although even in here there are some relationships that are already set up that are important for the main storyline. So I would recommend you read both of these books before you go into reading the main bulk of the story. And then Season of Storms really has to be read as the last book. I don't think there's a way around that, really. It wouldn't make sense otherwise, gotta be honest. So what were my overall feelings for the story and what was the rating that I would give it? I gotta be honest, the only book that I really enjoyed within the Witcher series was The Last Wish. I really enjoyed the short stories in this book. Most of the short stories were kind of like dark and twisted versions of traditional fairy tales, like Sleeping Beauty, like Snow White, and so on. And I really enjoyed that because, there was just something about them that I really liked. I enjoyed Sword of Destiny as well, although a lot less compared to The Last Wish. And to be honest, I wasn't the biggest fan overall of the big series, but we'll get into that now. We'll now get into the positives and negatives of this series. And yeah, let's start for once with positives, because for once I have a lot less of those than of the negatives. So the first big positive and the biggest positive in the entirety of the series, I have to say, really is the characters and their relationships. I really loved Geralt. I found him an incredibly interesting character because he is this loner type. But in the TV show, actually, he's much more so the loner type, I felt like, where he really acts like he doesn't want any company at all. And I felt like in the book it came through a lot more that he does enjoy the company of certain characters like Dandelion, who is an absolute delight. I love Dandelion. Then I really found his relationship with Yennefer very interesting, who is one of our other main characters. She is a sorceress, and there's a very interesting dynamic and relationship between the two of them where they don't have a lot of like page time together. Most of the relationships you get kind of off the page in a way, but there's still so much like three-dimensionality to their relationship, and it's unlike any relationship that I have ever read about in books, where the two of them are romantically involved, which by the way isn't really a spoiler because they're involved from the very beginning of the series basically. So the two of them are romantically involved, but they both have their reasons why they can't really be together. And it's not like a tragic, oh my god, we're so bad for each other, we can't be together, but it's just like the way their lives work. And my hair is doing stupid stuff. Then also I loved Geralt's relationship with Siri. Again, you mostly get your three main characters, who are Geralt, Siri and Yennefer, not on the page at the same time. And most of their connection you kind of get off screen, kind of in a way, like you don't really see them interact that much on page, but you still kind of get so much love for them. And usually I don't like it if characters, if their only interactions or the only proof for their relationships are off the page. I usually don't like that at all, but I really found that it worked well within this book, and it wasn't unbelievable, like it wasn't done in an unbelievable way. And yeah, Ciri's and Geralt's relationship was amazing as well. Ciri, I was really surprised. Ciri is a sapphic character in a high fantasy written by a man in the 90s, which was really surprising to me. I mean, there was some possible Stockholm syndrome involved there. No spoilers aside from that, so I don't know how good the representation really is, but like, for a high fantasy written before the year of 2000s, written by a man, my, like, you know, what I need and what I want is very low, what I expect is very low already. So the fact that Ciri is confirmed sapphic on the page, I'm already quite, like, appreciative of that, I would say. But yeah, aside from what I already said about The Last Wish, about me liking the twisted dark fairy tales of the short stories, that really, to be honest, sadly, is the only positive things I can say about the series. That I really enjoyed the characters and I really enjoyed their relationships. Because when it comes to the plot and when it comes to the writing style, I really don't have that much positive to say. And I can admit that a lot of it might come down to just kind of being used to the American style of fantasy very much. And because of that, me not enjoying maybe the more Polish or Eastern European style of writing stories. But something that happened a lot in the way the story was told, and I'm gonna hold up another one of the books now because now we're talking about the main story. Something in the way the story was told just kind of bothered me a little bit. And first of all, that was that usually, and I have talked about that in my wrap-ups whenever I talked about one of these books a lot, but usually when you have a series, you of course build towards a final climax over the entirety of the series, but then there's also always a climax you build towards within each book. That second part did not happen at all in these books. It was just written as if it was one continuous story. There weren't really any big climaxes within the books. I mean, there were sometimes big battles and big climaxes where you felt, okay, now something is happening, but that was rarely towards the end of the book. Sometimes it was in the first third of the book, sometimes it was within the middle of the book, and then it kind of mellowed out again towards the end, and that just made for a really weird reading experience. And I thought it might be better. At the end of the year, I pretty much read the books back to back, but I thought it might be better that way, but it didn't really make my reading experience that much more interesting. Another thing that I also really didn't enjoy is there was so much exposition. Like, oh my god, there were page-long conversations about like how this king is related to this king is related to this queen, and how they, like, I don't know, their relationships to each other in like page-long, chapter-long expositions, which was like so boring. And I started skim reading that a lot because I just wasn't interested, but then that led to me sometimes being confused in like on which side is this king now actually, and do we trust him, do we not trust him, who was he? And yeah, there was like way too much exposition and like talking about the politics of the world for books that were mostly around 300 pages. Then what also happened a lot is that a big chunk of the story wasn't shown to us but was told to us. For example, we saw this battle, or we saw that this battle started, and then it jumps to after the battle, and instead of following Geralt or Siri or Yennefer, like I swear, those three were our main characters, but I think they maybe got 50% of the screen time or page time within each book. But yeah, so instead of following our characters as they experience the plot, we then jump to after the plot, and there's some spy who tells his king, not even some spy, but some spy master who tells his king what his spy told him what happened to the characters we actually care about. And that was just like getting told the plot from third hand so much of the time just got really annoying and really tiring after some time. And I think that's mostly the main reason why I ended up not really enjoying the series that much. Because yeah, the plot wasn't all that special, I gotta be honest. It wasn't all that amazing. As I said, the main thing that really carried the series was the characters and their relationships, not really the plot. But it just then ended up not even being the characters that we're following, that we're reading about, but it just ended up being some other sorceresses or some sorcerers or some kings or some spy masters or some assassins or whatever. And that just got so annoying, so tiring. Really didn't like it, and it really dragged down the series for me. And also overall the plot, I have to say, it just kind of felt like there was no point to it at the end. Like, I really didn't like the ending. I felt the ending was completely pointless and a non-ending, and it didn't feel like there was anything resolved within the story. And I think part of the reason was on purpose, because there was this theme throughout the entirety of the series of like, you know, there are no happy endings. I'm not gonna say if the ending is happy or not, it's just a non-ending, but like there are no happy endings in the way like stories don't just end. It just happens in fairy tales, and other stories just continuously go on. And because of that, I think the ending was done like that on purpose. There was someone honking outside, but like, because of that, I think it was done on purpose. I still didn't like the ending. Like, I can recognize that some things are done on purpose, but I can still think that it's bullshit, to be honest. Because I read stories because I want stories, okay? I don't even need a happy ending, I just need an ending, you know? And this book definitely didn't give it to me. Also in the last book, there was like stuff that just came in out of like left field, out of nowhere, where I was like, what the fuck is going on right now? Why are we suddenly now like seeing this stuff? And I'm not gonna say what it is because it's spoilers, but yeah, it had to do with some like legends within our world, for those of you who might be watching for my thoughts, but have already read the series. So yeah, wasn't a fan of the writing style, and then plot-wise there were a few things, a few of my usual complaints, or of the usual complaints in general, that a lot of fantasy authors, especially grimdark fantasy authors, often get from female readers that are women, and that is that I felt that there was quite some unnecessary violence towards women. I also didn't like the whole point of what it meant for Siri to be the child of the Elder Blood. Again, no spoilers, but like the whole deal around that at the end was pretty misogynistic, I would say, and just not a fan of that, not a fan of the way that was resolved. Then also pretty much every female character that we come across within the series falls into bed with Geralt, which just got tiring after some time. It's not even that I actively disliked it or found it unrealistic or whatever, it's just that, like, you know, it's a bit unnecessary. And so yeah, that's that. I really enjoyed the dynamics between the characters, especially Yennefer, Ciri and Geralt and their found family circle thingy. But overall the story, the way it was told, just really dragged the series down for me, and ended up that for me overall I would give the series 2.5 stars, maybe a maximum of 3 stars. But to be honest, I didn't enjoy reading it that much, so I'm not sure I would even give it that much. And so would I recommend you go and read this series? Actually, no. I think there's so many more amazing fantasy series out there. However, what I would recommend is just reading The Last Wish. Oops, wrong way around. Just reading The Last Wish and just reading this as a standalone, because there's not yet that much set up that you really feel like you want to continue reading, but you still can if you want to, obviously. But yeah, I really enjoyed The Last Wish, so if you want to try out The Witcher, I would recommend reading this. But also be aware that The Last Wish is, like, it doesn't have that much to do with the main series, and I don't think you can tell from just reading The Last Wish whether or not you're gonna like the main series. Obviously, I gave this 4 stars, and then I really didn't like the rest of the series. And Sword of Destiny, I think if you read that, you might be more likely to be able to say whether or not you are going to enjoy the main series. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Witcher series by Andrzej Sapkowski. Tell me in the comments down below if you have read the books, whether or not you enjoyed them, or whether you feel similarly to me. All the links to my social media are in the description box down below, so go and check those out. All the links to my book club of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, where I read one adult high fantasy book written by a woman per month, are also in the description box down below, so go and check those out as well. And I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!